In this episode of Qt Widgets and more, you will see 10 reasons to use QSaveFile. And reason number 3 might surprise you. Okay, this is not TikTok, and I'm not going to show you 10 reasons, but there is a huge surprise in there for step number 3 or part number 3. That much I'll guarantee. So let's have a look at QSaveFile. That's a very simple class that you really should be using. If you haven't already done so, not now, when I'm done talking, it would be a good idea to go and grab for QFile throughout your whole source code. Let's start out looking at the very naive, okay, I've done it myself, so not stupid, but just naive implementation of saving to a file. Part 1, I have a string here, some data, and it's randomized with a number. Okay, I'm opening a file in temp my data. I'm creating a Q file, I'm opening it as write only, and I'm writing this file. And as you can see, I already compiled it, so now I also run it. Let's go and look at that file. It doesn't even have a new line, but that's cool. I can run it again, and the file changes. But there is a few problems with this. Problem number 1. What happens if I run out of disk space? Or what happens if... Where did the light go? Oh, I'm still here. Don't worry. It's just a small... now it's back in. It was just a small power outage, and it wasn't running on a laptop but on a desktop. So whenever the desktop powered off and I was in the middle of saving this file, the file would obviously not be saved. Is that a problem? Well, it certainly is. If it was a file with some configuration in that I had a good configuration, I then chose save, and in the middle of that saving, power went off, and now I had half a file saved and a whole configuration gone. With a bit of luck, I would still have a backup that I could go back to, but there is a much better solution. And yes, you guessed it, QSaveFile. Before I show you the code that works, we'll have to go through a few problems first. First, I would like to show you that QFile actually ends up giving me broken data if, say, the disk is full. And how would I do that? Well, I could start downloading a lot of kitten videos from YouTube until my hard disk was full, but I'm sure it would cripple my Linux system way more than I would like to. So let me present to you a small script here. This script is simply for creating a new hard disk on my hard disk. See, I create a file here from zeros, and it's called big file. It's 1 megabyte big, really big file, huh? I am making it into an extended file system, ext2. I'm making a directory, and I'm mounting with the loopback this one and changing the user interface or the user into be me. If you are on a Mac, then it looks like this. And remember, you can download the files from below here. And if you're on Windows, well, I actually don't know how to do this on Windows, let me admit that. But what you could do is to install Windows Subsystem Linux, and I would strongly suggest that you do that in any case. But we can have a discussion over that at Qt World Summit or somewhere else where at a later point. Anyway, I've done this now over on my hard disk here, and you can see I'm in temp my disk, and let's just see how much space there is. There is a lot of space. So let me run my application, which in part 2 now looks like this. It's writing to temp my disk, my data, but more or less the same thing, again, with a Q file. Looking at the disk, I have my data now, and my data looks like this. We can run it one more time just to validate that my data actually updates. And this is where the second part of my script hits in. I will now do a DD again. This time I will simply fill up my disk until there is no more space, And disk free now will tell me, sorry, there is no space available. Let's cat my data. It looks good still. But now I will run my application again. It will try to write to my data, and maybe it's lucky that it actually managed to get the whole file written there. But let's just go and change my data here so that it's some data even longer, and run it again. And now let's cat my data even longer. So it managed to save that too, which is somewhat annoying. And now 10 minutes later, I've been pondering why that was, because when I was preparing for this recording, obviously I didn't hit that. I did hit something else, but it's just showing you how difficult it is to properly do these testing for a file system full, and which is why a QSaveFile is so much more important. Because what I likely was observing was that I filled the hard disk, but I'm not allowed to address every single byte in my hard disk. The index for that would be super, super big, or add new files for every single byte of my hard disk. So it likely has block sizes of, I don't know, 4 kilobytes or something like that. And when I wrote in the new file was replacing the existing one. So there was exactly those 4 kilobytes or whatever much size available. Now, however, I tried to write some more. So you can see I adapted the application slightly here to this time have a for loop here that tried to write it 100 times and simply wrote this. And you can see it managed to get up to 80, and then there was definitely no more space left. And let's just see how big that file is. If it'll tell me exactly 4 kilobyte. Okay. I could, of course, had improved my code slightly by checking for the return type of write, which tells me how many bytes did it actually manage to write. But then again, why go through that additional hoop when we have QSaveFile? And now it's time to look at what is QSaveFile. Okay, so the key thing with QSaveFile is that it will write to another file, and only if it succeeds writing the complete content to that other file, it will take the original file and move the other file on top of that. And that way, of course, using some more hard disk space for having 2 copies of the file, but we do not risk that we are running out of disk space, or power is running out, or there's an application bug or something that gives us half a configuration or half a settings or half a whatever file. And I just said the word settings. QSettings itself is smart enough to do this. So if you're using QSettings, everything's fine. This is for your own kind of data files. So let's see what it looks like. It's almost the same. I am opening my file here, but instead of saying QFile, I say QSaveFile, and I am writing. And as you can see, I'm testing whether I can open the file as I did before. And if that's going well, then cool. Otherwise, I'll say I didn't manage to open it, and here's the error. And then I start writing, and writing it is done as before. So not a single line of change there. And here's the new thing. I need to commit my file. If I just do not do this here, then I'll simply not have any new content in my file. So if I try to migrate from QFile to QSaveFile by just adding the 4-letter save in front of, or in between Q and file, then I would all of a sudden not see my files being saved anymore. But remember to commit. And commit returns Boolean saying, yes, I did actually manage to commit, or no, I didn't. And in that case, it will give us an error message. Let's see the code running now. That was part 2. We need part 3. And part 3 is running, and let's go and have a look at the file over here. this is a time where you will go like this too. I actually went so far that I reached out to a good friend of mine. You've seen him on this channel multiple times, David Four, who wrote QSaveFile, and I said, what on earth is up with this? And he said, let me try that on my computer, and it worked on his computer, and it turned out that's actually a bug that was fixed not long ago, at least from my timeline perspective here. I am on Qt 6.8.0. It was fixed in Qt 6.8.1 or Qt 6.8.2, where the problem with this is that I'm writing so little data that it actually will never get to call flush, and it's in the flush call that it will complain. So step number 4 here actually will hopefully tell you that, hey, it didn't manage to save it. Of course, now I am actually able to save again. So much for all the demo effects here. Let's see if I run it another time. Now I couldn't save it. And this time, the reason why I couldn't save it this time was that I was actually trying to create a whole new file. And that was the part that failed on me. But let's just see what step 4, what that looks like. Exactly like step 3. Let's just go to step 3. Step 3, step 4. As part of changing these 3 and 4 here, you can see that it also changes down here. Well, this was just it's this part of these 42 and 43 you need to look at, because now I am checking whether I can flush and whether I can commit. This part here is needed in Qt 6.8.0 or before, or if you're using that older version and you are saving super small files, which this one-liner here was a super small file. If I moved beyond the 4K boundary, I think that I would have got the flush implicit done by QSaveFile or the IO stream underneath, and then I wouldn't have the problem, which was why it managed to get through so many times, because you don't write just a few lines when you write your own data. You have, I don't know, some data from your domain. And that's it from this episode of Qt Widgets and more. I hope you liked it, and if you didn't, well, let me know. Otherwise, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. There is much more interesting stuff coming along, I promise.